Hi, my name is Grant Shipman. I am an educator with Living Smith. Living Smith teaches the gold standard with co-living property management and co-living investment. Today, I'm going to teach you how to pick the correct property manager for your co-living investment. But first, let's talk about the why, because I don't want you to miss this. This is so significantly important. Why do you need to pick the right property manager? Well, let's step it back. Co-living is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States alone. It's making a huge amount of money. Why is that? Well, specifically because the number one demand for a rental unit is the one-person lease. The number one demand is the one-person lease, and co-living provides that. Right? It is significant. Not only does it do that, but it speaks to issues in regard to skyrocketing rents, housing shortages, environmental concerns, loneliness, you name it. It is huge and it is making a ton of money. So why are some companies like Hub House, over $13 million silicone startup, filing bankruptcy and leaving their landlords completely high and dry with a house full of tenants? Why are some companies going bust, selling out to others, Ollie, Star City, and more? Just look it up. While other companies like Living Smith are boasting a 97% lifetime occupancy average. That's massive, even through COVID, right? Why is this happening? Why? When there's so much money out there and so much demand, why are some companies, although hugely funded, going bust and others are thriving? Well, that's the reason why it's important that you pick the correct property manager for your co-living investment property. So what are the three ways that you can know that you're picking the right co-living property manager for your rental property? Number one is simple. It is a co-living property management company. We'll get back to that. Number two, you want to know their occupancy. Number three, you want to know they understand how to handle tenant conflict and they're not afraid of it, but they embrace it and they use it to supercharge your rental property. So let's break down those three really quickly, right? Number one is really simple. They need to be a co-living property management company. If they think they can manage your co-living property like a long-term traditional rental or a short-term rental like an Airbnb, it's not going to work. If they are specialized in student housing, in senior housing, in sober living, if they are a niched form of co-living, unless your house is that niche, it is not going to work. Again, the main thing is that your co-living rental property needs to be managed by a company that does co-living property management. And if you have questions about what any of that means, jump on our other free resources and it's going to answer it really carefully. But number one, make sure the property management company you choose to entrust your property to so it thrives rather than goes bust is a co-living property management company and not some other type of property manager. Otherwise, it's like you're having somebody who rents out shoes manage your co-living property because, hey, they do manage rentals after all, right? Okay, number two. Ask their occupancy, right? A property manager should know exactly what their average occupancy is and tell you that. To give you some rules of thumb, if the occupancy is not at least 90%, then go elsewhere. Really, it should be 95%, probably 97%. When we get higher than 97%, then we're looking at other issues with that property management company. But 97% is the ideal. 95% is okay. At least 90%, no lower. A major property manager in the co-living space in the United States just released its numbers, and they were very proud to say that they are at 80% occupancy. Oof, right? So just keep in mind, if you choose a property manager that is at 80% occupancy, not even speaking to the issue of why are they at such a low occupancy? Additionally, for every $10 you should make, you're only making $8. Okay, so that's number 2. Check out the occupancy, ask them, and it needs to be at least 90% or higher. 95, 97 is better. To give you an example from Living Smith, we have a 97% lifetime occupancy average, even through COVID. We thrived during COVID, right? So number 1, make sure that your co-living property manager is actually a co-living property manager, not just some other type of property manager. Number 2, make sure they have at least a 90% occupancy average, if not 95 or 97. And number 3, this is a little bit nuanced, but I think you can follow me. I'm going to try to explain it well. That the property manager you choose, the co-living property manager, should know how to handle conflict, and instead of running away from it, use it to your advantage. And by conflict, we're talking about tenant conflict. So there is two examples I'm thinking of ones of companies that are specifically co-living property management companies. And one will teach you to not have a living room. Why do they say this? Well, one reason is because they say, hey, if we turn that living room into a room, we can get you higher rents. Oh, but keep looking because the next thing, or keep listening, because the next thing that they say is that if you have a living room, people will hang out in that living room, the renters will, and there will be more tenant conflict. And we don't want tenant conflict. That is an issue. This same property manager has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline where tenants can call up if they have conflict so somebody can walk them through the conflict. How well do you think that works, right? How well do you think that works? Imagine if you were on the other end of this call and 2 people that are across the country you've never met are bringing you their roommate conflict. How well is that going to go? Well, this is what it can tell you. If they're running away from conflict, they don't know how to handle it. If they don't know how to handle it, they're probably going to say, well, at least we can say we have a 24/7 hotline that tenants can call when there's conflict, right? Another co-living property manager out there will advise to not have a TV in the living room. I want this to set up a flag for you because whenever you hear anything like this, listen why. They say why is if you have a TV in the living room, more people will hang out in the living room together and there will be conflict, and that's bad. Again, anything that they're trying to reduce conflict means they don't know how to handle it. Any good co-living property manager that is going to crush it for your rental property and your renters is going to understand that the power in a co-living rental property is the trust and respect that is built between the renters in your co-living rental property. If they don't get into conflict, how are they going to build trust, right? I mean, think about any of your relationships, particularly your work and those you live with, right? You have to have some type of conflict, even if it's really small, right? And then you can earn each other's trust and respect, right? So what do you need in this number 3? Well, if you hear any property manager who's trying to tell you how they're trying to reduce tenant conflict, what you can know is they don't know how to handle it. So what you want is to avoid those and instead look for this co-living property manager that has a very clear way for tenants to resolve their conflicts themselves, that the tenant should be able to handle it themselves, and that's going to equal a win. So I'm going to repeat the 3 things just to make it really clear, because this is going to be the difference between your house or multiple rental houses making huge money because there's a huge amount of service or going bust, right? Number 1, make sure the property manager is a co-living property manager. Number 2, that their occupancy is at least 90%, if not 95 or 97%. And number three, that they have a very clear way that is proven that tenants can use to resolve their own conflict, because then there's going to be trust built, appreciation built in those relationships, and people are going to want to stay in your house for a long, long, long time. They're going to take pride in their house. They're going to take pride in each other. This is Grant Shipman. I'm with Living Smith, teaching the gold standard of co-living property management and investment. Go live your daydreams.